given who my dad is, I grew up knowing about the biblical stories, but more from a psychological perspective. So the meaning behind the biblical stories. We never read them really as if they had actually happened.
Sometimes the objective world and the narrative world touch. You know, that's Jungian synchronicity. And I've seen that many times in my own life. The difference between those mythological gods and Christ was that there's a representation of, there's a historical representation of his existence as well. Now you can debate whether or not that's genuine. You can debate about whether or not he actually lived and whether there's credible objective evidence for that, but it doesn't matter in some sense because it does, but there's a sense in which it doesn't matter because there's still a historical story. And so what you have in the figure of Christ is an actual person who actually lived, plus a myth, and partly because it's too terrifying a reality to fully believe. I don't even know what would happen to you if you fully believed it.
If you believed in the story of Christ, or if you believed that history and let's say the narrative meet, let's
both
say.
I think.
So I probably identified as agnostic until last August. I'm not sure how this resonates with a Christian audience, but I took a lot of psychedelics, and I do think the psychedelics opened my mind to the possibility that there was something there I couldn't see. There were a whole bunch of parts of my life that were just not working well, and I wasn't depressed. I've been depressed. I wasn't depressed, but I was like crying daily because life was really hard, not because I was depressed. And I flew to Austin because I was planning on relocating from Canada, and I met my husband in Austin, and he's Christian. He's been a Christian his entire life. His parents are Christians, and he's like super Christian.
Anyone in the comment section who claims that her husband is a repressed homosexual will be banned. That is not okay, you guys. That is not okay. It is not okay to come in here and say, just look at his Instagram. It speaks for itself. Obviously, this is a repressed homosexual raised in a conservative Christian household, raised to hate himself. That is not okay. And if you say that in my comment section, you will be banned.
And he said, go home and pray and just ask God to reveal himself to you. And so I went back home and like prayed and like, really, please, if you're out there, please show yourself. I'm mostly just reading the Bible. So a lot, multiple times, and trying to understand as much as I can.
Christianity is the worst religion in the history of the world. The worst. The most demented, the most dishonest, the most fraudulent. And of the myriad forms of Christianity, of all the forms this religion has taken historically, and all the forms that can be found in the world today, the worst form of this religion is the diluted, modernized, reinterpreted, approachable, psychologically profound reinterpretation presented to you by Dr. Jordan Peterson and his bimbo, drug addict, plastic surgery victim, carnivore diet promoting daughter. Now, this comes as a shock to many people in my audience who may be atheists, may be skeptics, but who think, well, Christianity, compared to Mormonism, compared to Scientology, compared to Islam next door, is it really so bad? I'm going to show you just a little piece of evidence from the Bible, reflecting the fact that the New Testament was written in Greek. It was written by people who were not Jewish and who were not Israelites, but who were pretending to be. That is a kind of fraud. That is a kind of deception you will not find in the history of Buddhism. You will not find in the history of Japan, the writing of the Jinno Shotoki, or any of the ancient texts these other religions are based upon. You will not find it in the history of China, in the writings of Confucius, or the foundational ancient texts of Taoism. The Christian religion begins with a kind of deception that people still find unfathomable. They want to believe that the Christian religion was created by Jews for Jews and later, subsequently, was taken over by Greeks and Italians. But the truth is, it was a fraud from day one. What if I could prove to you that the American Constitution was written in Chinese and translated from Chinese into English? Wouldn't that be a shocking discovery? Wouldn't that make you reevaluate the whole history of what the hell happened when the Founding Fathers were debating the philosophy of how the Republic was supposed to work, so on and so forth? What about the opposite? What if I could prove to you that the current Constitution of Communist China was written in English and translated from English into Chinese? What if it was written in Russian and translated from Russian into Chinese? Wouldn't that tell you something about who wrote that document and why? Or would you ignore the evidence and insist, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. The Constitution has the same meaning no matter what language it was written in, no matter who wrote it, with what intentions. This is an email I received from a Christian preacher. Some of you will have received emails like this from complete strangers your whole life. Some of you will have received this type of email from your closest friends, relatives, parents, grandparents, teachers at school, different devout Christians connected to you one way or another. I reply by challenging this Christian preacher. I say, I have a very simple question for you. What language was the New Testament written in? It wasn't Hebrew. Your whole religion is built on a lie, not just little bits and pieces of it. The whole thing. And you're so pathetically unfamiliar with the historical context that produced those texts in Greek that you have no idea what the intentions of the authors were, and you never will know. Nobody wants to take this seriously. And people like Jordan Peterson are breathing new life into a lie that's almost 2,000 years old. This guy writes back, completely dismissing the significance of the language the text was written in. It's common knowledge that the New Testament was written in Greek. Oh yeah? How do you think the people in China would feel if you revealed that Confucius wrote in Sanskrit? How do you think the people of India would feel if you revealed that the Vedas were not written in Sanskrit, but were in fact written in Chinese. Don't you think that would lead to some kind of reevaluation of the text, of its significance, of questioning who created that ancient text, with what intentions and why? No. We can just ignore this mystery that's at the heart of Christianity. I press further. So why was it written in Greek? Why did human beings write it in Greek, not Hebrew? Who were those human beings? What was their relationship to Judaism? What was their relationship to your God? If the scriptures of Buddhism were originally written in Japanese and not Pali, not in any language indigenous to India, that would raise certain questions, wouldn't it? If the American Constitution had been translated into English from German, with German being the original language, that would raise certain questions, wouldn't it? You worship a book. It was written by people in a language you don't understand, for reasons you don't understand, in a culture you don't understand. See how he reacts. He can't take it seriously. If you take this question seriously, the unique evil of the Christian religion is revealed. That Christianity is a fraud in a way that no other religion is. Christianity is a fraud in a way that Buddhism is not, Confucianism is not, Hinduism is not, and even Judaism is not. He says, oh, well, the Jewish people at that time often knew at least two languages, if not more. Oh, yeah, bro. Oh, yeah. It was totally normal for Jewish people in Jerusalem to quote and misquote their own scriptures in Greek. It was really normal for Jewish people in Jerusalem to try to convert other Jewish people with revelations, divine revelations from the Jewish God that were in Greek, not Hebrew. Oh yeah, that totally makes sense, bro. Look at the geography surrounding the Sea of Galilee. Is it really possible that anyone who lived in Israel could make so many geographical errors? Just pause on this for one moment. This is a really tough context in which to apply Occam's razor. You can devise convoluted explanations for each geographical error that's in the New Testament, but the simplest explanation, Occam's razor, is that the people writing these texts in Greek did not live in Israel. They were making errors in the geography because they were ignorant of the geography. They were at best vaguely aware that there was a place called the Sea of Galilee, but didn't know what the names of any of the towns surrounding it were, so on and so forth. The place where Jesus killed 2,000 pigs in a mystical ritual, where exactly was that again? Close enough to the Sea of Galilee so that all the pigs could run into the lake, correct? Neither Gadara nor Gerasa quite makes sense, does it? Someone who lived in Israel at that time would know the difference between Gadara and Gerasa, right? They'd know how close or how far it would be from the lake. And tell me, does it seem historically coherent from your perspective that just one farm had 2,000 pigs in that location? So there were many farms with many thousands of pigs thereabouts? Were the authors so ignorant of Judaism and of daily life in the land of Israel near the shores of the Sea of Galilee that they imagined many thousands of pigs were being raised at Gadara? Archaeologically, do you think you're going to turn up evidence of masses of swine herds in that part of Israel or in any Jewish majority landscape of the era? The refusal to eat pigs was not a minor aspect of the Jewish faith at that time. Were the authors of the New Testament unaware of it? Or are you? Again, it's tough to apply Occam's razor. Even if you're an atheist, even if you're the most skeptical person in the world, it's tough to read the New Testament and admit to yourself that this fundamentally doesn't make sense. That a story about a magical ritual sacrificing 2,000 pigs, a story written in Greek to convert Jews to this new form of Judaism, this new revelation within Judaism, on so many levels, this doesn't make sense. Occam's razor. Set aside the convoluted excuses and explanations. Admit to yourself that the authors of this text were not Israelites. Someone wrote this story in Greek with very specific intentions. You haven't begun to figure them out yet. It would have been so easy to make the story plausible by saying sheep or goats, but it clearly says pigs. And here you are, 2,000 years later, regarding this as an historically accurate document that you imagine was originally written by people who spoke Hebrew, people who mysteriously made the effort to write in Greek and to make all of the cultural, historical, and geographic errors that a Greek would. Mysterious, isn't it? Mysterious that you believe in such a thing rather than, say, the god Ahura Mazda of Darius the Great, who has just as much evidence to support his existence, his greatness, his glory, perhaps even more. So who wrote the book, and with what intention? Are you claiming that Jewish people wrote this book for a Jewish audience, quoting and misquoting their own scripture in a language other than Hebrew? Are you aware of how much of the geography in the New Testament is false? Both in the countryside and within the city of Jerusalem, the authors make mistakes a native Hebrew speaker could not possibly make. Look at the word Nazarene in the Old Testament, and then see how it was misunderstood as Nazareth by the authors of the New Testament. That is not a mistake that God could make, nor a fluent reader of Hebrew. Now look at the proven lies behind the creation of a tourist attraction at Marywell or Mary's Well, and what the archaeology and textual study actually prove to the contrary. It is I alone who knows the way of God, and you who have been misled by Satan. It is you who is the disciple, and I the master, offering salvation.